ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकाय चक्षुरुन्मिलितमेन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टां स्थापितमेन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते। तप्ता कांचन गौरंगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वाञ्छकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्येव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। श्रीकृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। नमो नमो अनिरुद्धाय हृषिकेश इन्द्रियात्मने, नमः परमहंसाय पूर्णाय निवृत्तात्मने, स्वर्गपवर्गद्वाराय नित्यं शुचिसदे नमः। नमः हिरण्यवीर्याय चातुर्होत्राय तान्तवे। Hare Krishna. So we are continuing our discussion of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. In the previous week, we concluded the third chapter and we began the fourth chapter. We're following through with a few verses. In the beginning of the fourth chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, there are descriptions of the personalities. And these questions are being raised by Shaunaka Rishi, who is heading the participants in the gathering where the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken for perhaps the fourth time. The first time was when Sri Narad Muni was instructed by Sri Naranarayan Rishi in Badrikashram. And second time was when Srila Narad Muni spoke the Srimad Bhagavatam to Srila Vyasadeva. He gave him a summary study, or rather gave him very clear instructions on what should be the topics. It was not as elaborate as the text that we are pursuing or reading. The third time the Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken, it was spoken by Srila Sukadeva Goswami, right? It was spoken, I'm sorry, Srila Vyasadeva spoke to Srila Sukadeva Goswami. And the fourth time was when Sukadeva Goswami spoke to Maharaj Parikshit. And then subsequently, there were gatherings in Naimisharanya where it was headed by Saunaka Rishi, and Saunaka Rishi was actually questioning the personality, Sutta Goswami, who had heard from Sukadeva Goswami on the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam. So before pursuing the questions, he was interested in knowing the audience. So he was pursuing a line of questioning of Sutta Goswami, where he was asking about Vyasadeva, then he asked about Sukadev Goswami, then he goes on to ask about Parikshit Maharaj. So in the previous week, there were a few discussions on the qualities of Sukadev Goswami. The most important quality was that he was liberated. He was already situated in liberation. He was Brahmabhuta Prasannatma. Because the topic of Srimad Bhagavatam is sublime and it is meant for those who are wanting to relish the transcendental pastimes. Even though Sukadeva Goswami was liberated, he was extraordinarily attracted to the Srimad Bhagavatam. So it is meant for those who are far beyond even the pursuit of liberation. It is meant for those who want to take up Bhagavad Dharma. And one of the characteristics of Sukadeva Goswami, or one of the characteristics of the speaker, which Srila Prabhupada talked about in the previous chapter, to summarize, was that the speaker of Srimad Bhagavatam should have absolutely no material motivation, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is spotless. Spotless, pure literature, which is untouched by motives of liberation or fruitive activity, is then eventually relished by those who hear it, because the speaker himself ought to also have the same qualities of being completely free of jnana and karma as being objectives. Jnana karmadi anavratam. The speaker should be free of motives which are materially situated or for liberation, bhukti or mukti. And in that, Srila Prabhupada qualified that if someone were to speak Srimad Bhagavatam for the purpose of monetary reward, the monetary reward in itself is meant for the purpose of sense gratification. And as a consequence, he makes a clear statement saying, one who has sex desire, which is eventually the main goal of everyone who pursues sense gratification in different levels, should not be heard. Such discourses can contaminate the mind. So Srila Prabhupada makes a statement saying such a person is not qualified. So we, as speakers of Srimad Bhagavatam and hearers of Srimad Bhagavatam, and then our discussions, we cannot claim any qualification whatsoever. But we are under the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Under the protection of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, our desire is to be free from fruitive activity. Our desire is to be free from a desire for being liberated. So in that sense, we are on the path of purification. And the more and more we discuss the Srimad Bhagavatam amongst ourselves, the more and more we spread the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam, we would also become very nicely situated on the path of complete purification. So that's the hope and the aspiration everyone should have. So we are not being precluded. But the understanding one should also have is that the purity of the vessel is as important as purity of the content. So we gave the example in the previous week that there are different stages of purity of chanting. One may chant in Namaparad. If one chants in Namaparad and does Harinam, the person who hears such Harinam will be motivated to pursue material objectives. One who chants Harinam but is situated in Namabas, is free of offenses but is not chanting the pure name, will motivate the hearer of such chanting to pursue the path of liberation. One who chants Harinam, who is completely free of offenses and has also attained purity and is able to chant Shuddhanam, will motivate the hearer to take up the process of wanting to call upon the pure names of the Lord. We gave the example of Srila Prabhupada, where the entire movement was started by the chanting of Srila Prabhupada. The movement was inaugurated in a similar manner by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by Nityananda Prabhu, by their associates on the streets of India, different parts of India, Bengal and Orissa, eastern side specifically. So such chanting was like fire. It immediately burned through the sinful reactions by entering the ears and motivated the person who is hearing to immediately take up the path of devotional service. Right? So in that sense, depending on our station of purity, whatever we speak, whatever we chant will have an effect to the extent to which we ourselves have been purified of fruitive and desires of, purified of fruitive desires and other inferior qualities. So that to the extent to which the speaker of Bhagavatam has themselves absorbed Bhagavad Dharma, have themselves developed faith in the process of chanting of the pure name, have themselves isolated the goal of Krishna Prema as the only goal in life, to that extent, their speaking would have an effect on the person who hears. So this is the qualification which is being given by our acharyas. right? We are all aspiring for that platform. So text 6 in that order is Katam alakshitah paurai sampraptah kuru jangalan unmata mukhat jaravad vicharan gaja sakhvaye. How was he, Srila Sukadeva, the son of Vyasa, recognized by the citizens when he entered the city of Hastinapur, now Delhi. Delhi was known as Hastinapur. After wandering in the provinces of Kuru and Jangala, appearing like a madman, dumb and retarded. So, this is a matter of great curiosity which is being raised by Shaunaka Rishi. He says Sukadev Goswami, by appearance, has matted hair. He is a 16-year-old person, very young, but again, he has matted hair. He is completely renounced. He doesn't look like a person of normal situation. And, you know, he also looks, he doesn't speak, he doesn't express himself. And because of his extraordinarily renounced condition, austere condition, people can mistake him to be mad, someone who has, whose intellect is completely failed. So, how did the audience even recognize that he was capable of speaking such sublime matters? It's a very pertinent question because, pratyaksha praman, the praman of looking at someone and then judging the quality of the person externally, right, is normal behavior. Everybody looks at the physical appearance of a person and passes judgment. Everybody looks at what happens on the physical plane and then passes judgment. If Sukadev Goswami's appearance was so deluding because of his disheveled appearance, he was not wearing any clothes, he was Digambar, so someone who is completely lost to the world is the one who would not wear any clothes. He had matted hair, he was a 16-year-old, and he appeared, quite unkempt, so to speak. So he looked like a madman, someone who was not going to be worthy of attention. So the answer was very clearly, how did they recognize him? They recognized him when he began speaking. They recognized the transcendental personality when he began speaking, right? I don't know, maybe I'm not repeating it correctly, but then there is this maxim or proverb which says that, a fool is not known until he opens his mouth, or something to that extent. I don't remember the exact wording. It's almost as if you don't open your mouth, our own stupidity will not be known. But then in his case, he opened his mouth and his transcendental qualities came forth. Everybody was able to recognize that this person is transcendental because he is able to speak the truth, and the truth comes forth. It is penetrating, and he is sharing such sublime truth. And because he's such a pure vessel, that truth is being passed on from the spiritual sky right into our hearts. It's penetrating. The sadhu is known by his speech. The sadhu is known by his speech. Speech that motivates us into action, not just entertainment. Years back, I used to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a very renowned speaker. This was before I seriously became following the precepts of Srila Prabhupada. And the speaker was so good, so very good, that the motivation to hear Srimad Bhagavatam used to go on till late in the night, and I used to hear till 1 o'clock in the morning. But then eventually, the next morning, there was Mangalahati. I used to miss Mangalahati practically every day of the week. And this was when I was very young. And I practically used to miss Mangalahati every week because I used to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Then the question came about as to what is it which is very important when you hear Srimad Bhagavatam. One should be able to be motivated to participate in Bhagavad Dharma. So one should be able to hear and feel motivated to pursue the path of devotional service, because one cannot understand Srimad Bhagavatam or one cannot participate in the verses of Srimad Bhagavatam. You cannot live scripture unless one is chanting the pure name. So one should be motivated to wake up and engage in all the activities that are required to purify ourselves, the most important of which is chanting of the pure name. So if you hear from unqualified sources who themselves are not motivated to follow Bhagavad Dharma as enunciated by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we will not be motivated by hearing those classes. It will be very wonderful. The katha will be very nice to the point of being distracted. It could keep us awake, right? But we would not be motivated to surrender the physical senses, wake up, and then pick up the beads and call upon the holy name, begging for mercy. So the speaker is known, or rather, Sukadeva Goswami was known when he opened his mouth, not by physical appearance. Text 7. Katam va pandave yasya rajarishir muninissaha samvadaha samabhutatata yatraisha satvati shrutihi. How did it so happen that King Parikshit met this great sage, making it possible for this great transcendental essence of the Vedas, Bhagavatam, to be sung to him? Another question. Text 8. Sagodohana matram hi griheshu grahamedinam avekshate mahabhagas tirti kurvam stadashramam. Sukadeva Goswami was accustomed to stay at the door of a householder only long enough for a cow to be milked, and he did this just to sanctify the residence. So he was so renounced. He was renounced and he was completely disinterested in what the mundane world had to offer. And he used to stay not so much for any benefit of his, he was not there around to engage in begging so that he could maintain his body. He used to stay in the house of Grihasthas for a very short period simply to purify the environment. So now the question is, indirectly, Shaunak Rishi is asking Sutta Goswami, how did you make this personality sit for 7 days? He doesn't sit anywhere for more than perhaps a few minutes. How did you manage to pin him down? Text 9. Abhimanyu sutam sutta prahur bhagavato uttamam tasya janma mahascharyam karmani chagrinihinaha. It is said that Maharaj Parikshit is a great first-class devotee of the Lord and that his birth and activities are all wonderful. Please tell us about him. So it's pertinent. So someone who could motivate this Sukadeva Goswami to engage in kirtan, the confidential kirtan of Srimad Bhagavatam, and this Sukadeva Goswami is so rare to be associating with worldly people and to even stay in one spot for a few moments, that Parikshit Maharaj himself must be so very highly qualified that he was able to pin him down. So they wanted to know who was able to make him sit down and speak. Who was able to motivate Sukadeva Goswami? Because Sukadeva Goswami was a fully realized soul. He was liberated and he was transcendently situated, completely relishing the Srimad Bhagavatam and the message of the Bhagavatam. He had no other motivation. So he would be also the appropriate judge to judge the opposite party, the audience. So how did that happen? So they wanted to know about Parikshit. Parikshit is so extraordinary. He had such good qualities. Tell us about him. Sa samrat kastya vahetoh pandunam manavardhanah prayopavishto gangayam anadrityadirat shriyam. He was a great emperor and possessed all the opulences of his acquired kingdom. He was so exalted that he was increasing the prestige of the Pandu dynasty. Why did he give up everything to sit down on the bank of Ganges and fast on to death? This was also very unusual. What is so strange? Here he was, Parikshit Maharaj. He was the grandson of the Pandavas. He was given a body by the Supreme Person himself. See, Parikshit Maharaj, his original body was destroyed by the Brahmastra. By Krishna's mercy, his body was reconstructed and it became intact so that he could live on and carry on the lineage. It was Krishna's mercy who protected him. So there's someone who has been given a physical body by Krishna himself will not be affected by it. So he was quite special even by birth. His circumstances of birth, Krishna was involved. So he is very special. So he was also a great emperor, and he was very opulent, even by material terms. He had really no reasons for him to be giving up his life. So what is it which is motivating him to give up everything, sit on the bank of the Ganga, and fast on to death? Namanti yat padaniketam shivaya hani yadanani shatravah katam savirah shriyam angadushyajam yuvai satoshrastum aho sahasubihi. He was such a great emperor that all his enemies would come and bow down at his feet and surrender all their wealth for their own benefit. He was full of youth and strength, and he possessed insuperable kingly opulences. Why did he want to give up everything, including his life? It was astounding. Because why would someone who is situated, very well situated, want to do this? This is like suicide. Fasting on to death is like suicide, because all in a sudden, someone who has everything, who is very young, who is healthy, and so on and so forth, sitting down and saying, I'm going to fast on to death. Shivaya lokasya bhavaya bhutaye ye uttama shloka parayana janaha jivanti natmartam asau parashrayam mumocha nirvidya kutah kalevaram. Those who are devoted to the cause of the personality of Godhead live only for the welfare, development, and happiness of others. They do not live for any selfish interest. So even though the emperor, Parikshit, was free from all attachment to worldly possessions, how could he give up his material body, mortal body, which was a shelter for others? Now they're coming on to, he is useful to others. Okay, he may not have any personal motives to live on because he is free from all such motives, being a devotee of the Lord. But then he was useful. He was a Raja Rishi. He was so well situated that everybody could have benefited by his extended rule. So what is it which motivated him to give up his body, which was a shelter for others? Because the king is the shelter for others. So how did he get motivated? 13. Tat sarvam naha samachakshva prishto yad iha kinchana manye tvam vishaye vacham snatam manyatra chandasat. We know that you are expert in the meaning of all subjects except some portions of the Vedas, and thus you can clearly explain the answers to all the questions we have just put to you. This is an important purport, something that is very applicable for all of us. This is 1st Canto, chapter 4, text 13. Srila Prabhupada here explains about the two different types of Brahmanas. Okay, one he says the difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajakas. So he's talking about a distinction between the Brahmanical class and the Parivrajakas who are above, who are situated above, who are renounced, okay, transcendently situated. The distinction which Srila Prabhupada explains in the purport here, I would just like to quickly summarize. This is text 13 of 4th chapter, is that the Brahmanas, they have to engage in reading the verses of the Vedas, they have to engage in performing yajnas, they have to engage in performing the different types of activities for the purpose and for the benefit of fruitive results for those who hire them or for other purposes. So the Brahmanas have to really work very, very hard on pronunciation. They have to really work hard on pronunciation because they're engaging in fruitive activity, and fruitive activity needs to be perfect. So they have to engage in purifying their ability to pronounce. They have to pronounce Sanskrit in a perfect way. Srila Prabhupada distinguishes the preacher, the Parivrajaka. He says the preacher does not have to worry about Sanskrit pronunciation. The preacher of transcendental subject matter does not have to worry about Sanskrit. He should be able to explain the essence. He or she should be able to explain the essence. Okay, so I'm just going to read this. The difference between the Vedas and the Puranas is like that between the Brahmanas and the Parivrajakas. The Brahmanas are meant to administer some fruitive sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas. But the Parivrajakacharyas, or learned preachers, are meant to disseminate transcendental knowledge to one and all. As such, the Parivrajakacharyas are not always expert in pronouncing the Vedic mantras, which are practiced systematically by accent and meter by the Brahmanas who are meant for administering Vedic rites. So the Brahmanas could be experts in Sanskrit meter, pronunciation. The Parivrajakacharyas, or the preachers, who are supposed to disseminate transcendental truth. In other words, they are supposed to understand the verses, digest the essence, and then understand the Desha, Kala Patra, time, place, and circumstances, and then share truths based on the audience's capacity to understand and implement them. For such personalities who are preachers, there is no need for them to worry about going into such detail in terms of practicing the accent and meter. Yet it should not be considered that the Brahmanas are more important than the itinerant preachers. They are one and different simultaneously because they are meant for the same end in different ways. One has to administer fruitive activity. People who engage in fruitive activity eventually will get frustrated, and after frustration, they would take up the path of transcendence. So purification has to occur on a gradual process, and Brahmanas are responsible for allowing the fruitive activity to take place in an expert fashion. But the transcendentalists, the preachers, their business is to understand the truth and to speak the truth. So it is the essence which is more important to them. There is no difference also between the Vedic mantras and what is explained in the Puranas and the Itihasa. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, it is mentioned in the Madhyadina Sruti that all the Vedas, namely the Sama, Atharva, Rig, Yajur, Puranas, Itihasas, Upanishads, are emanations from the breathing of the Supreme Being. The only difference is that the Vedic mantras are mostly begun with the Pranava. Pranava is Omkara, Om. And it requires some training to practice the metric pronunciation of the Vedic mantras. But that does not mean that Srimad Bhagavatam is of less importance than the Vedic mantras. On the contrary, it is the ripened fruit of all Vedas as stated before. Besides that, the most perfectly liberated soul, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, is absorbed in the studies of the Bhagavatam, although he is already self-realized. So he is a self-realized personality. He is already absorbed in Srimad Bhagavatam. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature study. And this study does not require a focus on so much on pronunciation and meter and so on and so forth. It requires a focus on understanding the essence. Our acharyas demonstrated it. Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur was a world-renowned scholar of his time. He had written books. He had authored all kinds of complex topics and stuff. He was really well read. When he chose a spiritual master, he chose Srila Gaura Kishordas Babaji Maharaj. You see, yesterday was the disappearance day of Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj. Gaur Kishordas Babaji Maharaj was a transcendental personality who was completely transcendentally situated, but he was illiterate. He was not literate. So one can be transcendentally situated and know the most confidential truths of Bhagavad Dharma without being able to even read a single line. It's very important for those who practice to understand this distinction, because we will miss the essence and instead starts focusing on the form. This is more form over substance when we start focusing on the various aspects of Sanskrit and so on and so forth, which is it's not a bad idea to be good at that, but the essence could be missed, because there would be many who could be advanced souls who practically would not even be able to read, which was what was demonstrated by our acharyas, where he took initiation from someone who was completely illiterate. He said, "This is my spiritual master. He is transcendently situated. He knows Krishna. And he can give me Krishna Bhakti. He can give me prema. So he's qualified to be my spiritual master." So that was the quality of Gaura Kishodas Babaji Maharaj. So this is important for us, because we should not focus so much on the form. We should focus on the substance of all the classes which are given by the various devotees. Because there are many devotees who, they could be Indian, they could be non-Indian, who may not be well accomplished in Sanskrit literature. And Srila Prabhupada has made it so easy for us that he has given us purports, he has given us translations, and we can just get completely absorbed. So we don't want to miss out on the wonderful realizations of devotees whose expertise may not lie in understanding how to pronounce Sanskrit or how to read Vedic literature, but their expertise might be that they have a heart which is capable of receiving the truth from the super soul. Okay, two different things. Text 14. Sutta uvacha dvapare समानुप्राप्ते तृतीये युगपर्याये जातः पराशराद्योगी वासव्याम kalaya hare. Sutta Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasadeva was born to Parasara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Okay, so he was born in the junction which occurs. Even within a yuga, there can be junctions. There can be 3 junctions, just as we have the sandhis which occur during a day. We have the AM, afternoon, and PM. In a similar fashion, we have the AM, which is morning, the afternoon, and then sunset. In a similar fashion, a yuga can also be divided into parts, 3 parts. So Srila Vyasadeva was born in between, and he was born in a sandhi between the different divisions of the yuga. And he was born to Parashara, sage Parasara, and to Satyavati, who was actually the daughter of a fisherman, a boatman. Text 15. Sakadachit sarasvatya upasprisya jalam suchihi vivikta eka asina udite ravi mandale. Once upon a time, Vyasadeva, as the sun arose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Paravaragyana sarishihi kalena vyaktaramhasa yugadharma vyatikaram praptam bhuvi yuge yuge. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. The great sage Vyasadeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on earth in different ages due to unseen forces in the course of time. Bhautikānām ca bhāvānām shakti hirsām chatatkritam ashraddhād dhānān nihit sattvan durmedān hashitayushah durbhagamscha janan vikshya munirdivyena chakshusha sarvavarnashramanam yad dadyau hitam amogadrik. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all statuses and orders of life. It's very interesting. When we observe that we are impatient, understand that it is a lack of goodness. It is sattva that gives patience. It is sattva that prolongs life. The less sattvic the quality of time, less would be the longevity of people born in that age. Satya Yuga was most sattvic. It was able to preserve life for a very long time. Treta, a little less. Dwapara, far less. And then Kali, the mode of ignorance, is very high. So since tamas and rajas are so high, longevity and the quality of life are themselves reduced. So now impatience is due to the lack of goodness. if someone is sattvic, they would not be devoid of patience. Patience is a quality of those who are sattvic. Someone who is very rajasic is constantly having all kinds of desires and looking towards the future to fulfill such desires. Because they're constantly looking towards the future to fulfill such desires, they are in anxiety and they're also impatient. So Vyasadeva could see that there will be so many things which are considered basic in a proper situation, missing in the lives of people, that they will be very impatient. They will not be in the mood of goodness because they will constantly be agitated, because the senses will not be properly gratified. Their bodies would be defective in one way or the other. The facilities would be very less. And as a consequence, there will be all kinds of desires. All kinds of desires would make them quite impatient and quite stressful. And as a consequence, they will be completely devoid of goodness. He could see that. Because the quality of the age would be such that there would be a lacking in so many aspects of life. Because there's a lacking in so many aspects of life, there's anxiety for those objects too. That anxiety produces stress. He could see that, Srila Vyasadeva, when he sat on the banks of the river Saraswati and he was contemplating, then he could see all this occurring in the future. Text 19. Chaturhotram karma shuddham prajnanam vikshya vaidikam vedadhad yajna santayait vedam ekam chaturvedam. He saw the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into 4 in order to expand them among men. So there was one Veda, which was the Yajur, and then it was divided into 4 to simplify and to provide access based on the needs. Okay? He assimilated and he saw that people will not be able to take advantage. And if they have to act, they need a body of knowledge. If that body of knowledge is inaccessible because of a lack of expertise, because to find a Brahmana who is an expert in all the Vedas would be very difficult. Because the quality of Brahmanical life would have dropped, Sattva would have dropped, so the Brahmanas themselves would not have the capacity to fully understand scripture, and such Brahmanas will not be able to perform fruitive activities for their clients or whoever comes to engage them. And as a consequence, there would be dissatisfaction. So first we have to enable the pursuit of knowledge. You have to create a proper knowledge base, right? So for creating a proper knowledge base and to make it more accessible to Brahmanas of different types so that they could develop expertise, he divided it into 4. Yajur became Rik, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva, depending on what you wanted to do. Okay? So he divided it. And then he also wanted to explain the essence. To explain the essence of all these Vedas and to see how it can be applied, he wrote the Puranas, he wrote the Itihasas, he took the essence, and then he was also able to incorporate the speech of Krishna as the Bhagavad Gita in the Mahabharata. All of this was incorporated. And this was done because there has to be also this practical version of, if you know this, what can you accomplish? Or why should you do this? What is the purpose of life? So ultimately, after doing all this, one comes to an understanding of the Bhagavad Gita and understands that the essence of all the Vedas is to know Krishna. Krishna says that. So Srila Vyasadeva included that as well so that it can be easily accessed. And it was made as a part of the 5th Veda. The 5th Veda is where the Puranas, Itihasas, Mahabharata, and so on and so forth come forth, which becomes very easily accessible by those who do not have the expertise to decipher the complicated Sanskrit of the 4 Vedas. Vedic knowledge, specifically those that relate to being able to provide activities that are fruitive, is normally codified. It is not straightforward. One has to be able to have vision and have the authority to be able to read the Sanskrit and for them to be able to remove the code. And in a lot of cases, there are numerical codes. The computing that is being done today of coding things and securing and so on and so forth, this was done in a very beautiful way by our sages, where no one could unlock it unless one had transcendental knowledge, one had some power, one had the power to understand it. they could not unlock it, because each and every Sanskrit verse, one had to divide, find out what the numerals were, and then the numerals themselves were reversed, so they had to put it back in the right spot, and then they had to extract one more number, and then they have to reach conclusions based on that. So it was all hidden. Very secretive knowledge was all hidden. Okay, so it was not easy for the layman. So to provide an essence, Srila Vyasadeva introduced the Puranas, Itihasas, and so on and so forth to show them the practical application of all of this is ultimately for you to perform Bhagavad Dharma. Ultimately, it is for you to come to the platform of realizing that Krishna is supreme. So he provided that knowledge as well. Rigyajo Samadarvakya Vedas Chatvara Udritaha Itihasa Purananam Cha Panchamo Veda Uchyate. The 4 divisions of the original sources of knowledge, the Vedas, were made separately. But the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the 5th Veda. The Puranas themselves were divided based on axis. It was divided based on the modes. Okay, it is the same author who had complete vision of the consciousness of everybody who are going to be a part of the future yugas, to make sure that every level of consciousness, which is predominantly divided into sattva, rajas, tamas, could access truths, to accept a feature of Godhead as supreme. He created the Puranas. So he divided them based on the sattva, rajas, and tamas guna. So based on the guna, people will get enthused to read a certain literature. They would also be enthused to pursue the worship of a certain deity form. So he created based on such qualities. And he had vision, because this was like one person who was doing everything. So he had complete vision end to end, and he was able to do it in a nice way. Trattar Gavedadaraha Farapailaha Samago Jaiminihi Kavihi Vaishampayanaye Vaiko Nishnato Yajusam Uta. After the Vedas were divided into 4 divisions, Paila Rishi became the professor of the Rig Veda, Jaimini the professor of the Samaveda, and Vaishampayana alone became glorified by the Yajur Veda. Adharva Angira Sammasit Sumantu Daruno Munihi Itihasa Purananam Pitamero Maharshanaha. The Sumantu Muni Angira, who was very devotedly engaged, was entrusted with the Adharva Veda. And my father, Romaharshana, was entrusted with the Puranas and historical records. Text 23. Taheta Rishayo Vedam Swam Swam Vyasyan Anekada Sishyehi Prasishyaistashisyair Vedaste Sakino Bhavan. All these learned scholars in their turn rendered their entrusted Vedas onto their many disciples, grand disciples, and great grand disciples, and thus the respective branches of the followers of the Vedas came into being. Okay? Respective. It was all divided, especially if one understands Vedic astrology, Jyotish, at a very deep level, one is able to recognize if the following of a person of a certain lineage, in the sense that depending on whether the person has engaged in Vedic study in one of these lineages, one can find out which lineage was that person coming from through the chart. One can find out whether the person was studying Samaveda, was this person studying Atharva, was the person studying Rig or Yajur. So one is able to find out one of those Vedas. So the point which we're trying to make here is that the divisions were made, expertise was gained by dividing it and then putting people in charge, and then they imparted the knowledge, and that knowledge was passed on by them over different lineages. And then information was also provided on how to recognize the different lineages if one has indeed studied such Vedas through their astrology and so on and so forth. This information is also a part of the Vedic knowledge on how to recognize. Okay, so if someone is born, they have inclinations, which Veda should they choose to begin? Okay, this is a part of the Vedic study as well to find out. So it is pretty intricate. It is not something which was just randomly done where someone gets enthused and says, okay, I'm going to do Yajur, I'm going to do Rig, Sama, Atharva. Either you're born in a family and it is clearly, what do you call it, known that you're coming in a certain lineage, or it is also determined by certain other aspects, such as astrology, where one determines that this is the lineage the person comes from, and that lineage were experts in this Veda. So this person should continue studying that Veda because they would already have knowledge from the past. And it's not applicable for everyone, but it is applicable to those who have been exposed to Vedas in the past. Text 24. Taeva Veda Durmedye Dharayante Purusheryata Evam Chakara Bhagavan Vyasa Kripannavatsalaha. Thus the great sage Vyasadeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so that they might be assimilated by less intellectual men. We can hardly remember what we did in the morning. So this is meant for us, where it was all broken down, and even that is inaccessible. It's completely gone. Okay? We are very fortunate to be following Bhagavad Dharma, where it is very simple, where it is also one who is completely devoid of all learning, can still, by the process of surrender, become eligible to participate in the most sublime of all truths, which is Srimad Bhagavatam. Text 25. Stri Sudra Dvija Bandunam Traina Shruti Gochara Karma Shreyasi Mudanam Shreya Evam Bhavediha Iti Bharatam Akyanam Kripaya Munina Kritam. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it is wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus, he compiled a great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice born. Now, here it is being mentioned about women. So, this is not being mentioned in a derogatory sense of distinguishing gender. This is being mentioned more so in being able to recognize that one in a male body can have an internal consciousness of Stri, woman. One in a female body can have the internal consciousness of being male, Purusha. This Purusha and Stri are distinctions in terms of the mental capacity of the person. Is the person susceptible to emotions, or is the person controlled by intelligence? So the distinction that is being made here is not so much based on external body. It is not based on the external body. It is based on the capacity of the person to be dominated by emotions versus intelligence. Okay? That is a distinction that is being spoken here. Laborers. Laborers are Shudras. We are all Shudras because we are employed by others. As a consequence, we are constantly in fear. We are in the mode of ignorance, and we don't know if our jobs are going to be there tomorrow, so there's fear. So this is the Shudra life. And this Shudra life is also not suitable because it's filled with anxiety and automatically puts us in the mode of passion and ignorance because we are constantly anxious. We cannot be Sattvic. Because we are not Sattvic, we don't have the ability to pursue transcendental truth, okay, or pursue the complex subject matter of the Vedas. So the laborers are being mentioned here as Shudras. The Shudra is a quality again, the quality of wanting to be subservient and being dependent on others makes one anxious. Being dependent on others will make one anxious, right? And that anxiety disqualifies one from assimilating transcendental knowledge. Friends of the twice born. Okay, Dvija Bandunam. Dvija Bandunam is somewhat derogatory in the sense that they are not Dvijas. They are not twice born, but they somehow by association can be called twice born. So Dvija Bandunam. Dvija Bandhu, they are relatives of people who are transcendently situated or relatives of people who are twice born, and that particular quality endears them because they themselves do not have any qualification. It is just that they have been born in such families, so they carry such association, and for them they need help as well. None of this should be seen as being derogatory or critical of others. This is the truth in terms of consciousness. You simply have to understand that if one is constantly lamenting, one is constantly anxious, and one is constantly in fear, then one is a Shudra. Just we should understand that. Most of us fall in that category because we have artificially extended ourselves and we depend on so many people for sustenance. As a consequence, there's fear. Text 26. Evam pravartasya sada bhutanam shreyasi dvijaham sarvatmakaina piyada natushyad dridayam tataha. O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied. After doing so much for the future time, he was not satisfied. Although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. So he was not satisfied at all. So since he has done all-round welfare, it was expected that he would be satisfied. But he wasn't. Srila Vyasadeva wasn't. Nati prasiddha dridadhyah saraswatyastate suchau vitarkayan viviktastad idam chovacha dharmavit. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself. See, this dissatisfaction was felt by him. So this is the next two verses are from Srila Vyasadeva himself. We'll just complete today's chapter because there are just a few more verses. Dhritavrate nahi maya chandansi gurovo jnah manita nirvyalikena grihitam chanusasanam bharata vyapadeshena hi amnayartascha pradarshitaha drishyate yatra dharmadi stri shudradi apiyuta. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual master, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others, friends of the twice-born, can see the path of religion. This is Srila Vyasadeva reflecting within himself. Text 30. Tatapi bata me dehyo hi atma chaivatmana vibhuh asampanna iva bhati brahma varchasya satamaha. I'm feeling incomplete, though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. He felt despondent. He felt a vacuum. This vacuum was created by Krishna within his heart. Because Srila Vyasadeva is transcendental and Krishna is transcendental, he creates this vacuum to facilitate an entry. Kimva Bhagavata Dharma na prayena nirupitaha priyaha paramam sanam taeva hi achyuta priyaha. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service of the Lord, which is dear to both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Someone who is perfect and who is infallible, who is already situated in transcendence, can only be attracted by something even higher. Okay? What is even higher than Brahman, being situated in transcendence? What is even higher than being situated in transcendence is the extraordinary pastimes of the Supreme. This whole idea of Sambandha Gyan, is higher than merely being freed from material clutches. It is Sambandha which is relished. It is that Sambandha which is relished by those who are transcendently situated and Krishna himself. So that is what Srila Vyasadeva is talking about. Tasyaivam kilam atmanam manyamanasya kidyatah krishnasya narado bhyagat ashramam prag udharitam. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipayana Vyasa on the banks of the Saraswati, just as Vyasadeva was regretting his defects. Sri Narad Muni, you will find Sri Narad Muni strategically entering in the lives of all personalities who are going to make extraordinary endeavor to please Krishna. So you have Dhruva Maharaj, initiated by Narad Muni. Prahlad Maharaj, initiated by Narad Muni. The Valmiki Ramayan was initiated by Narad Muni because he was the one who made Sri Valmiki begin. Practically, at the juncture of anything which is supposed to motivate Bhagavad Dharma, Sage Narada is a part of it. That is his glory. His glory is that he is extraordinarily empowered to offer this great blessing of Bhagavad Dharma. And you will find that even here, he is the one who is beginning it. This is the last verse. Tam abhigyaha sahasa pratyutayagatam munihi pujayamasa vidivan naradam surapujitam. At the auspicious arrival of Sri Narada, Sri Vyasadeva got up respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. So Vyasadeva, Srila Vyasadeva, worships his spiritual master, Narad Muni, and by doing so, he gives him the same station, same respect as he would give to Lord Brahma himself. And this is because Sri Narad Muni received the complex subject matter from Lord Brahma, and he is passing it on to others. So he is equally knowledgeable, and he is also equally to be worshipped because he is of the same station. Okay. So today we conclude the 4th chapter. This is setting the stage. There were quite a few important messages. I will summarize the messages in the next session, which is on Thursday. And then we will continue further. Let me see if you have any questions so far. I want to see if I can answer any questions. If there are any, please put them forward now. When you are explaining how important it is to hear the pure holy name of Krishna from a qualified person, but at my stage, how can I know who is pure? This was your question as well in the previous week. What we need to do is to follow Prabhupada's instruction given in the Upadeshamrita, Nectar of Instruction. In the Nectar of Instruction, Srila Prabhupada defines purity. He talks about Uttamadhikari, Madhyamadhikari, Kanishtadhikari, and he talks about steadiness. He really doesn't talk about the internal quality. He talks about the external quality, which we should be able to see. So the external quality that you should be observed in someone who is steady is, number one, there has to be a profound effect in your hearing from such people and them being able to enthuse you in devotional service. So it's a matter of realization as well. You see, Krishna attracts us through 2 types of gurus. One is the Siksha and the other is the Diksha Guru. So when Krishna attracts us through the Siksha, Diksha Gurus and through his holy names, the way he attracts us is by using these personalities as an instrument. So if we get enthused by hearing, then we also have to understand that the person is motivating us towards Bhagavad Dharma. So if you get enthused to hear someone and then you're able to act with urgency on Bhagavad Dharma, then you ought to understand and accept such a person as your superior. That is the first lesson which one can learn from. The second is to observe. The observation is, what are the external qualities by which one can observe? as far as we are concerned, what are the external qualities of understanding purity and how do we implement it? The external qualities of understanding purity could be that someone is very steady in their practice. In addition to enthusing us, they are also steady in their practice. They are doing what they are talking about. They're able to chant. They're able to understand scripture. They're able to remain consistent in terms of following the regulative principles and so on and so forth. So that is the purity that we ought to constantly be monitoring. Okay? That is what we ought to be monitoring, and that is how we should be understanding. The internal purity, where someone is transcendently situated, but externally they could be confusing to us, is not a stage for us to be able to pass judgment on. It is not something which we can judge on. So, for example, this confusion in Bhagavatam, Sukadev Goswami externally did not appear to be well read. Externally, he did not appear to be someone who was transcendently situated. He appeared to be someone who was renounced, yes. He appeared to be someone who was austere. It is when he started speaking that those who were hearing him could understand that he was indeed transcendently situated. So that is the other way. Okay? The best way is to hear, and if the person is able to, number one, enthuse us, because enthusing us is very different from a well-accomplished speaker. If someone is able to enthuse us to engage in well-known shastric precepts of devotional service, then that person is indeed to be considered a superior. The degree of purity of such a person is a matter of our own understanding. So that is not something which we want to speculate on, because the more pure we are, the greater would be our understanding of the purity of the opposite party. If someone is at our level, we will be able to see that they are at our level. If someone is at a higher level, we would not be able to fully understand their level, because it's difficult for us to comprehend things which are beyond us. But again, we observe them on their external qualities. We hear from them, we get enthused. Okay? Does it make sense? Our observation has to be external. It is the external demonstration that becomes important. And to recognize if someone is able to enthuse us, then we begin respecting them, because Krishna is using them to enthuse us. You see, Krishna is using his servants to enthuse us. So we start respecting those who enthuse us because Krishna is using them as an instrument. So he is cultivating our faith through others. So that's why it becomes very important. Okay, that's like an immediate realization of, okay, if I'm hearing and I'm developing some consciousness which is favorable, and I'm able to act upon such instruction, and that instruction again is in line with shastric precepts and so on and so forth, then you ought to understand that that person is our superior. Okay, so those are a few ways in which we can really do so. It has to be by pratyaksha. It has to be a pratyaksha. If there's any controversial aspect, it is best to find out from those who are at the higher level, saying that this person enthuses me, this person is externally, when to observe, seem to be following everything properly, but here is something which seems to be controversial about this person. So, Prabhu, can you help? So you should approach someone who is senior, who can, help you in understanding if there is any controversy, if at all. That is a safer way to do so, because you don't want to spoil the flow of enthusiasm that is coming from Krishna. Krishna is attracting you to Krishna consciousness through the person, so you don't want to spoil that. So you want to be very careful. So you want to inquire in a very careful way if there is anything which is not in place. Okay, thank you. See, that is the path in which we select our spiritual masters as well. You see, initially everybody is a Siksha Guru, and then amongst the many Siksha Gurus, we keep hearing classes. We all in a sudden, in some cases, feel very enthused about someone because they're motivating us. You see, they are motivating us to change our ways. They are motivating us to increase our ability to chant, increase our ability to read. They're providing an understanding which is helping us move forward in spiritual life. then automatically that particular person is being used by Krishna. We can understand that. Then we also understand that that person should also have been following the precepts. That person should have also been doing everything properly, because otherwise they cannot really, give pep talk. Spiritual talk is not pep talk. You cannot do that. You cannot be motivating people by simply being eloquent. Spiritually, you cannot do that. There has to be something more than mere eloquence, because there are many people who are eloquent. Eloquence is not the quality. It is more a situation of being able to motivate others because of conviction, because the person himself or herself has seen the truth. As a consequence, they motivate others. So that's again a standard that we ought to keep in mind. But most important, remember that this particular idea of discrimination is being spoken about quite clearly by Prabhupada in Upadeshamrita. Please read Upadeshamrita again, Nectar of Instruction. In that, he gives a basic understanding of how to recognize from external attributes. Okay, there are many scriptures. The Sandarbhas talk about internal attributes of devotees. But Prabhupada talks about observe and find out. So that is a good thing for you to start with also. Okay, I don't see any more questions, so I'll end here. And if there are any more questions, feel free to drop a note. We'll be very happy to address it, and then we'll meet again to continue with chapter 5 of the first canto. Hare Krishna.